This is Survival Dispatch Remnant, and this is what it looks like when everything collapses. Then it gets worse, because the world doesn't end all at once. It breaks, piece by piece, system by system, until nothing holds. Power fails, communications go silent, supply chains choke and die, and the people waiting for someone to fix it realize no one is coming.
The Day the Sky Burned, Day 0. Season 1, Episode 1, Intro. The alarm on Mark Smith's phone went off at 6:30 in the morning, the way it went off every weekday morning of his adult life, which was with an escalating chime his wife had set for him 6 years ago, and which he had never bothered to change. He reached for it in the dark without opening his eyes and silenced it. Beside him, Sarah was already awake. He knew she was already awake because the bed was half cold on her side, and because there was a sliver of light under the bathroom door. Sarah had been getting up before him for as long as they had been married. It was one of the things he had come to rely on about her without ever saying so out loud. He sat up on the edge of the bed in the dark and put his feet on the cold floor and scrubbed his hands over his face. Tuesday, loan committee at 10. A conference call at 11:30 he was going to try to push to Wednesday. Lunch with a client who wanted a line of credit Mark was not inclined to extend. He stood up, stretched his back until something between his shoulder blades clicked, and walked down the hall to the kitchen in bare feet. The kitchen was already warm with coffee. Sarah was standing at the counter in her scrubs, hair pulled back, reading something on her phone with the little crease between her eyebrows that she got when she was reading something she did not like. Casey was at her feet, 110 pounds of brindle and white muscle, amber eyes half closed, tail thumping once against the cabinet when Mark walked in. Morning. Morning. She didn't look up. What are you reading? Something stupid. How stupid? Russian. Stupid. He walked over to the coffee pot and poured himself a cup and leaned against the counter next to her. She tilted her phone so he could see. The screen was a news alert. NATO ambassadors recalled from Moscow overnight. A second alert, newer, 2 minutes old, said the Chinese Foreign Ministry had canceled a scheduled press briefing. A third alert from a different app said the Dow futures were down 9% in pre-market trading, which was a number Mark had not seen once in 20 years of finance, and he read it twice. 9%. That's what it says. 9% would halt trading. I know. Sarah, 9%. Mark, I can read numbers. I don't know what it means. You tell me what it means. He didn't tell her what it meant. He didn't know what it meant. He had an idea of what it could mean, and the idea sat in the back of his throat, and he took another sip of coffee to push it down. 9% in the futures market before the opening bell was not a market reaction to an earnings miss. 9% was a market reaction to a war. Upstairs, a door opened. Jake's feet came down the hallway and then down the stairs and then into the kitchen. In basketball shorts and a Cherokee high baseball hoodie, scratching the back of his head, hair flattened on one side from the pillow. He stopped when he saw both of his parents standing at the counter. What? Nothing, Mark said. Dad, you've got your face on. I don't have a face. You have a face, Dad. Eat your cereal. Jake went to the pantry and poured cereal and milk and carried it to the table and started eating it, standing up, phone in one hand, spoon in the other. His own alerts were coming in. Mark watched his 17-year-old son's eyes move across the screen and saw the moment Jake read something he didn't like because the chewing slowed. Dad. Yeah. Why did the Japanese Prime Minister just do a press conference at 5 in the morning? Mark set down his coffee. Sarah had turned and was looking at the window over the sink. The sky outside was the sky of a normal October Tuesday in Cherokee County, Georgia, gray with pre-dawn, the silhouette of pines against it. Nothing wrong with any of it. She looked at it a long time. Sarah, I'm listening. What are you thinking? I'm thinking I want to know where my children are for the next 6 hours. Sarah, we don't. Mark, I'm thinking I want to know where my children are for the next 6 hours. Emily came into the kitchen behind them, 12 years old, small for her age, auburn hair tangled from sleep, sketch pad tucked under her arm, the way she always had it. She had put on pants by herself, and they did not match the shirt she had slept in. She walked past her father and her brother and her mother. without saying anything to any of them. Sat down at the table, opened the sketch pad, and began to draw. Casey got up from the cabinet, crossed the kitchen, and lay down across her feet. Yeah, Dad. Did you sleep? Yeah. Any dreams? She looked up at him for a second over her pencil. She was Sarah's daughter down to the bone marrow, and there was a thing she did with her eyes when she was deciding whether to tell the truth, and she did it now. I had a weird dream. What kind of weird? I don't want to talk about it, Dad. Okay. She went back to drawing. Mark looked at Sarah. Sarah was still looking at the window. At 6:51, the first cellular emergency alert hit every phone in the room at the same time. 4 phones screaming the same tone at once, which is a tone nobody in that kitchen had ever heard outside of a tornado warning at 3 in the afternoon in July. The tone went for 4 full seconds. Casey was on his feet before the tone stopped. Mark picked up his phone. The message was 1 line long. Shelter in place. Tune to emergency broadcast. This is not a drill. No county, no hazard type, no duration, no instructions on where to shelter or what to shelter from. Sarah, I see it. Sarah, it doesn't say what kind. I see it, Mark. Jake was reading his phone. Emily was looking at her mother. Casey was standing at the back door with his ears up and his head tilted. Mark set his coffee down very carefully on the counter and crossed to the television in the living room and turned it on. The television came on to the local morning news, which was not the local morning news. It was a national feed. It was a man Mark had never seen before, at an anchor desk that was not set up for him, reading from something off camera, with the bottom third graphic still trying to load. The graphic came up mid-sentence. It said, in all capital letters, confirmed detonations. Mark stood very still in his own living room with a coffee cup in one hand and looked at his television. Behind him, in the kitchen, Sarah said, without raising her voice, Mark, come here. Now. He turned. She was at the window over the sink. She was looking south, the sky to the south, over the tree line, in the direction of downtown Atlanta, 40 miles away, had just flashed white. Segment 1. Mark crossed the kitchen in 3 strides, and his wife did not move from the window. He looked over her shoulder out through the glass, and the yard was full of gray dawn light, and the pines were still. And the sky behind the pines to the south was doing something the October sky over Cherokee County, Georgia, had never done in the 15 years he had lived in this house. A second flash came while he was looking. Not lightning. There was no weather. It was a white that had a yellow edge to it. And it was not in the sky, it was under the sky, low on the horizon behind the trees, the way a flashbulb fires behind a curtain. It came and it went, and it left a bruise on the air that his eyes could still see after the flash was gone. Mark, I see it. Mark, that's not... I see it, Sarah. Jake was at the kitchen doorway with his cereal bowl still in his hand, and he said in a voice Mark had not heard from his son since he was 9 years old, Dad, what was that? Mark did not answer him. A third flash came, farther west this time, not in the direction of Atlanta, in the direction of the horizon past the Alabama line. It lit the bottoms of the clouds for a full second and a half, a color that was not any color Mark had words for, and it went out slowly instead of all at once, which was somehow worse than if it had gone out all at once. Casey was at the back door. His ears were up. His tail was down and still. A low thing had started in his chest that was not a growl. Not yet. It was the sound before a growl. Mark had heard that sound from that dog twice in 4 years. Once at a coyote in the back fence line, and once at a man who had walked up the driveway at night looking for an address, and both times the sound had meant something was not right. Sarah turned from the window. Jake. Yeah, Mom. Go wake up your sister. No, she's up. She's at the table. Go get her and bring her in here and put on shoes, real shoes, not sandals. Okay. Go. He went. She looked at Mark. Basement. Sarah. Basement, Mark. Sarah, we don't know what that is. We know exactly what that is. He did not answer that. She took him by the sleeve of his t-shirt, which was something she had not done in years, and which he understood in the moment to be a thing she was doing on purpose, a contact thing, a way of reaching through the fog in his face that he could feel was there even from the inside. Mark, listen to me, listen. Those are detonations. We don't know where they are exactly. We don't know how far. The wind is from the west. Atlanta is south. Whatever that was in Alabama is west. I need you downstairs in the basement with me and the kids and the dog and everything we can carry in 10 minutes. We can argue about what that was later. Not now. Move. Okay. Mark. I said, okay. I'm moving. She let go of his sleeve. He moved. Emily came in from the kitchen with her sketch pad clutched to her chest and her eyes very wide, and Jake right behind her with his hand on her shoulder. Sarah knelt down in front of her daughter and put both hands on her daughter's arms. Em, we're going to go to the basement for a little while. Is it a tornado? No, sweetheart. Then what is it? I'll tell you in the basement. I need you to go get your shoes on. The old ones, not the new ones. And a hoodie. Jake, go with her and help her. And bring your own stuff. I want everybody in the basement in 5 minutes. Okay. Jake, listen to me. If the tone goes off again on the phones, don't stop to read it. Just come down. You hear me? I hear you. Go. He went. Emily went with him. Casey watched them go. Mark was already moving. He was in the garage. He pulled open the pantry door that opened into the garage, and he grabbed the 2 cases of bottled water off the bottom shelf. The ones Sarah had been rotating for 2 years, that he had been making jokes about for 2 years, and he carried them through the laundry room toward the basement stairs. The basement stairs were at the end of the hall behind the laundry room. He set the water down at the top of the stairs and turned around and went back and grabbed the old emergency kit from under the utility sink. The red plastic one Sarah had packed with batteries and a flashlight and a hand crank radio, and he had never once looked inside, and he carried it to the top of the stairs too. Sarah came past him with an armload of medication bottles, a zipper bag of documents, and the trauma kit he had not known they owned. She did not stop. She went down the stairs. He heard her switch on the light down there, and he heard her swearing at something under her breath. Casey followed her. He turned around and went back to the kitchen. The television was still on. The man at the anchor desk was still reading. The graphic at the bottom had changed. It now said multiple confirmed detonations East Coast. And the man at the anchor desk was saying, in a voice that had started to shake, reports at this hour of detonations near Norfolk, Virginia, and the greater Washington metro area. We are also receiving unconfirmed reports from West Coast stations of a detonation in or near San Diego. To repeat, we are receiving these reports unconfirmed and are working on the signal cut. The screen went to color bars. Mark stood there in his own living room and looked at the color bars on his own television, and the color bars stayed up for about 3 seconds, and then the screen went to black. The little red light on the cable box was still on. The television was still on. The signal was gone. He walked back into the kitchen. Outside the window in the direction of downtown Atlanta, the sky was no longer flashing. The sky was now the color of something burning behind a hill, a dirty red smear along the horizon, low and wide, with a column of something rising out of the middle of it that he did not want to look at directly and could not stop looking at. Sarah came up from the basement. Mark, Atlanta. I saw. Sarah, Atlanta. I know. Your mother is in Marietta. She looked at him. She did not answer. She walked past him into the garage and she started pulling tubs. Segment 2. The first tub weighed 60 pounds, and Sarah dragged it 2 feet across the garage floor before Mark got his hands under the other end of it. They carried it together, backward down the laundry room, around the corner, down the basement stairs. Casey went down the stairs ahead of them. Sarah set her end down on the concrete at the bottom of the stairs and did not stop to breathe. She went straight back up the stairs past him for the second tub. Sarah, slow down, slow down. No. Sarah, we have time. We don't know how much time we have, and I'm not going to find out the hard way. Second tub, Mark. Now. They got the second tub. They got the third tub. They got the 2 5-gallon water jugs off the workbench in the garage. They got the hand crank radio and the 3 lanterns out of the pantry. Sarah carried the zippered pouch of medications down in one hand and the trauma kit in the other, and she did not stop to put either one down until they were both on the folding table in the corner of the basement that had been set up, Mark now saw for the first time, for exactly this purpose. The basement was an unfinished walkout. Concrete floor, open ceiling, washer and dryer on the near wall. The far wall was poured concrete, below grade, the back of the hill. The folding table was against the concrete wall. There were 3 camping cots leaning against the wall behind the table that Mark had last seen at a Boy Scout weekend 6 years ago and had assumed were in the attic. They were not in the attic. They were in the basement, where Sarah had apparently staged them at some point and never mentioned. She was already setting up the cots. Jake came down the stairs with Emily behind him. Emily had her hoodie on. She had shoes on. She had the sketch pad. She had, tucked under her other arm, a stuffed rabbit that Mark had not seen her carry in 3 years. She stood at the bottom of the stairs holding it, and she looked around the basement, and she looked at the tubs and the table and the cots and the trauma kit, and she looked at her mother. Mom.
Yeah, Em.
You did this already. I did, sweetheart.
When?
A while ago.
How long?
A while ago, Em. Emily looked at her father.
Dad didn't know. No, sweetheart. Dad didn't know for how long.
Em, we don't have time to... 2 years, Mark said. He said it to the concrete wall because he was not going to look at his daughter when he said it. Mom's been doing this for 2 years and I didn't know. Emily looked at him a long time. Then she nodded once, the way Sarah nodded when a thing was settled, and she walked over to the corner of the basement farthest from the stairs and sat down on the concrete floor with her back against the wall and opened her sketch pad. Casey followed her and lay down between her and the stairs. He did not lie down next to her. He lay down between her and the stairs. Mark watched him do it, and he understood, a second too late, what the dog was doing.
Upstairs through the basement ceiling, the television in the living room did nothing because the television was off. The house was quiet in a way houses in 2020s, America, were not ever quiet. No furnace, no refrigerator cycling, no hum from the router, no traffic on the street, nothing.
Sarah.
Yeah? Power's out. I know. When did it?
About the time the TV cut. I watched the kitchen light flicker and die while you were standing in the living room.
The whole neighborhood? I don't know. I haven't looked. Jake was at the basement stairs. He had his hand on the rail. He had already started back up the stairs.
I'll look. Jake. I'll look and I'll come right back down, Mom.
Jake, you don't go out of the house. You stand at the kitchen window and you look and you come back.
Okay.
Jake. I heard you, Mom.
He went up. Sarah watched him go. She did not follow him. Mark watched her watch him, and he understood that his wife was measuring something about their son in real time, and that she was measuring it because she was not going to be able to keep him inside the house forever, and she was trying to figure out how much rope to give him today. She turned back to the tubs. She opened the first one. Mark, come here. He came. She pulled out a stack of printer paper in a zippered plastic pouch. On the top page, in her own handwriting, in black Sharpie, it said, Protocol, grid down. She handed the pouch to him. Read it. Sarah, Mark. Read it. I wrote it 2 years ago. I wrote it for this morning. Read it. He opened the pouch. He read it. It was a list. 27 items numbered in her nursing school handwriting. The first item was confirm family inside. The second was close and lock all doors and windows. The third was fill every container with water before pressure drops. The fourth was pull main breaker. The fifth was do not open the door for anyone, not even family, until M and S agree. He read down the page. Communications, food, light discipline, hygiene, medical. He got to item 23. It said, if fallout is a concern, basement, interior room, away from walls facing threat direction. He read item 24. It said, threat directions from home, south, Atlanta Metro, west, Huntsville/Redstone. He read item 25. It said, do not panic. We have run this. You know what to do. He stood there in his own basement holding a list his wife had written for the end of the world, and he did not say anything for a long time.
Mark.
Yeah?
Item 3. Water. Filling every container. Item 3, Mark. We're losing water pressure by the minute. Go upstairs and start filling the bathtubs, both of them. Every sink, every pot in the kitchen, every pitcher, every bucket. You don't drink the first minute of what comes out. We'll filter it later. Go." He went.
Jake was at the top of the stairs when Mark came up. His face was white.
"Dad, the whole street is dark. There's a car stopped in the middle of Jeffers Drive. Nobody's in it. The driver's door is open."
Okay.
"Dad, bathtub Jake, upstairs, now, go." Jake went. Mark went. Segment 3. The water in the upstairs bathtub came out clean for about 45 seconds, and then it came out the color of weak tea, and then it came out with a rusty brown thread in it that swirled and did not dissipate. Mark stood at the edge of the tub and watched the color change, and he did not shut off the tap because Sarah had said to fill everything that would hold water, and a bathtub of tea-colored water with a rust thread in it was still water that would filter. The tub filled. He shut off the tap when it was 3 inches from the rim. He moved to the sink. The sink was colder. The pressure was lower. He plugged the sink with the stopper and turned the tap on and left it running and moved down the hall to the other bathroom.
In the other bathroom, Jake was already at the tub. He had his phone in his back pocket, face down. He was watching the tub fill. He was not looking at Mark when Mark came in. "Dad." "Yeah." "I want to go down the street."
"No." "Dad, the car on Jeffers, the door is open. Somebody..."
"No, Jake." "Dad, I said no. And your mother said no. And you said you would come back up when you went to look. And you came back up and now we're staying inside."
"Dad, what if it's the Hendersons? What if it's Mr. Henderson? He's 73. Mark looked at his son, 6 feet tall, 17, hadn't shaved in 2 days. There was a streak of something gray on his forehead that was maybe drywall dust from the basement, maybe something else. His eyes were wet, and he was pretending they were not.
"Jake, listen to me. We don't know what's in the air outside this house right now. We don't know how far the nearest detonation was. We don't know what direction the wind is going to carry what it's carrying. Your mother has spent 2 years thinking about this morning. We are going to do what your mother says for the next 6 hours, not 6 days. 6 hours. Then we will figure out the next 6 hours. Is that clear?"
"Yeah." "Is it clear, Jake?" "It's clear, Dad."
"Good. Pot's next. Kitchen. Go." Jake went. In the master bathroom, Mark plugged the tub and turned on the water and let it run. He walked out into the master bedroom. He opened the closet. The gun safe was in the back of the closet behind Sarah's winter coats. He knelt down in front of it and he punched in the combination and he opened it. Inside the safe were 2 rifles, a shotgun, a revolver, a 9mm pistol, and he saw for the first time 4 additional boxes of ammunition that he had not purchased. The ammunition in the back of the safe on the bottom shelf was in boxes Mark had not seen. Sarah had bought ammunition. He had not known she knew how to buy ammunition. He took the shotgun out of the safe. He took the 9mm pistol out of the safe. He loaded the shotgun with 6 rounds and set it on the bed. He loaded the pistol with 15 rounds and slid around into the chamber and set it on the bed next to the shotgun. He stood there a long moment, looking at the 2 loaded weapons on his own bed, in his own bedroom, in his own house at 5 minutes past 7 in the morning on a Tuesday. Downstairs in the basement, Casey barked once, sharp, 1 bark, then silence. Mark picked up the pistol and went to the stairs.
"Sarah."
Casey heard something, not in the house, outside. Outside where?
"Front of the house, by the road. I'm coming down." He went down with the pistol in his hand. Emily was still in the corner with her sketch pad. Casey was at the bottom of the basement stairs now, facing up. His tail was stiff, his head was low. Sarah was already moving toward the small window, high on the wall that looked out at ground level toward the front of the house.
"Sarah, don't stand at the window."
"I'm not standing at the window, I'm looking at the window."
She crouched under the window and came up slowly and put her eye to the corner of it. She held there for about 5 seconds. She came back down. "There's a man on Jeffers Drive." "What man?" "I don't know him. He's middle-aged. He's walking. He's carrying something. I can't tell what."
"Walking toward us, walking past us, toward the cul-de-sac. Mark, he's not walking right."
"What does that mean?" "I don't know. It means he's not walking right. He's walking like somebody who isn't thinking about walking."
Mark came to the window and crouched and looked. The man was in the middle of Jeffers Drive. He was wearing a bathrobe over a t-shirt. He was barefoot. He was carrying what looked like a cordless house phone in his right hand. He was walking down the center of the street at a pace that was neither urgent nor slow, his head forward, his eyes open. And as Mark watched, the man lifted the phone to his ear and spoke into it and put it down again and kept walking. There was nobody on the other end of that phone. There was nobody on the other end of any phone in Cherokee County at that moment. The man lifted the phone again, spoke again, put it down again. Casey's chest had gone tight and silent. The low sound in him was gone now. What was in him now was just the watching. Mark. I see him. Mark. That man. I see him, Sarah. He's going to walk past the house and he's going to be fine. We are not going to open the door. Are we clear? We're clear. I don't want the children to see him. Okay. The man in the bathrobe walked past the front of the Smith house at a steady pace, lifting the cordless phone to his ear every 20 or 30 feet, speaking into it, lowering it, walking on. He did not look at the Smith house. He did not look at anything. He walked down Jeffers Drive and around the bend toward the cul-de-sac and disappeared behind the hedge at the corner, and he did not come back. Sarah sat down on the concrete floor with her back against the wall. Mark. Yeah. That man is in shock, or something worse. I've seen people in shock. That was close to shock. That wasn't shock. What was it? I don't know. He didn't know either. She was quiet for a long time. Mark, I need you to go get Jake, and I need you to bring him down here. I don't want him upstairs alone. Not for the next hour. Not until we know what the street looks like. Okay. And Mark? Yeah. Leave the pistol down here. Segment 4. Mark left the pistol on the folding table and went up the stairs. Jake was in the kitchen at the sink filling a stock pot. Every pot they owned was lined up on the counter. 2 were already full. Jake was working through them the way he worked through anything he was told to work through, which was steadily and without complaint. And Mark stood in the doorway for a second and watched his son do it and felt something move in his chest that he did not have time to identify. Jake. Yeah. We're going downstairs. I've got 4 more pots, Dad. We're going downstairs, Jake. What happened? A man walked past the house. He wasn't right. Right how? He wasn't right, Jake. Your mother wants you downstairs now. Shut off the water. Leave the pots. Come on. Jake shut off the water. He came. They were on the basement stairs when the radio in the corner of the basement came on by itself, which was a thing Mark would think about later and realize had not happened by itself at all. Sarah had cranked it. She had cranked it while he was upstairs, and she had set it on the table, and she had turned it on, and she was crouched in front of it with her ear near the speaker, and a voice was coming out of the speaker, and the voice was saying something Mark could not hear from the stairs, but that had made Sarah go very still. Sarah. Wait. Sarah, what is it? Wait, Mark. Let me hear it. He waited. Jake waited on the stairs above him. Emily in the corner had stopped drawing and was watching her mother. The voice on the radio was an old recording. It was looping. Mark could tell it was looping because he had heard the same 3 syllables come around twice in 10 seconds. It was an EAS tone, the real one, the one Mark had heard maybe twice in his life. And it was going and going and going, and then it broke into a man's voice, not an announcer's voice, a tired voice, a military voice maybe, that said, "This is a confirmed nuclear event." Repeat, confirmed nuclear event. Confirmed detonations in the following locations: Washington, D.C., Norfolk, Virginia, San Diego, California, Colorado Springs, Colorado, Offutt Air Force Base, Nebraska, Minot, North Dakota, Whiteman, Missouri, Barksdale, Louisiana. Additional unconfirmed reports from, and then it cut to static, and then it came back, and the voice said, Atlanta metropolitan area, Dobbins Air Reserve Base, Redstone Arsenal, Huntsville, Alabama, Oak Ridge, Tennessee, Kings Bay Naval Complex. Citizens are advised to shelter in place. Do not travel, do not, and the static came back and stayed. Mark sat down on the basement stairs. Sarah turned off the radio. She did not look at him. She did not look at the children.
She sat on the floor for a moment with her hands on her knees, very still, the way she sat when she was praying, although she was not praying that Mark could tell. And after about 5 seconds, she stood up and walked over to the wall where she had laid out her protocol sheet, and she picked up a pencil and she started writing on the back of it.
Sarah,
"Give me a minute."
Sarah, that list.
"Give me a minute, Mark." She wrote. She was writing fast. She wrote for maybe 45 seconds, and then she stopped, and she turned around, and she looked at her husband sitting on the basement stairs.
Mark, come down the stairs and sit at the table.
He came down. "Jake, M, come here."
They came.
She laid the list on the table. On the back of her protocol sheet, she had drawn, in a rough circle, the state of Georgia. She had put a dot where Canton was. She had put an X where Atlanta was. She had put an X where Dobbins was. She had put an X where Robbins was. She had put an X outside Georgia, to the west where Huntsville was. She had drawn an arrow from the western X pointing east. She had drawn a smaller arrow from Atlanta pointing northwest. She set the pencil down. "Okay, here's what I know. Atlanta was hit. Dobbins was hit. Huntsville was probably hit. The wind is from the west. That means fallout from Huntsville is coming toward us fast. It also means fallout from Atlanta is going mostly away from us, to the east, which is the only piece of good news I have for any of you right now. Jake. M, look at me."
They looked at her. "We're going to stay in this basement for the next 48 hours, minimum. We're going to stay in this basement in the corner farthest from the west wall, because the west wall of this basement is the wall facing the direction the bad air is coming from. We have food, we have water, we have the trauma kit, we have each other. We have Casey, we have Dad and me. We are going to be okay in this room. Do you understand me?" "Yeah, Mom." "M, yeah, Mommy. I want you to say it."
"We are going to be okay in this room. Good girl."
Mark was looking at the map. He was looking at the arrow from Huntsville.
"Sarah, your mother."
"Mark, Sarah, if Dobbins was hit..."
"Mark, stop."
"Sarah, Marietta is 4 miles from Dobbins."
"Mark, I know where my mother lives."
"Sarah..."
"I know where my mother lives, Mark. I know how far Marietta is from Dobbins. I knew before you did. I have known for 2 years, and I know what it means. And we are going to deal with what it means another day, because if I let myself deal with it right now, I am not going to be able to stand up. And I need to stand up for the next 2 days, and so do you. And we will deal with my mother on another day. Do you hear me?" "I hear you."
"Do not say another word about my mother today."
"Okay." She sat down on the concrete floor, and only then, for about 10 seconds, she put her hands over her face, and her shoulders shook without sound. And Mark watched his wife break in a way he had never seen her break, and then he watched her put it away. She dropped her hands. Her face was wet, and her face was the face of the nurse he had married, and she stood up and she said, "All right, cots, beds, blankets, now."
Emily in the corner said without looking up from her sketch pad, "Grandma's in heaven."
Nobody answered her. Casey walked across the basement and lay down next to her and put his head on her knee. Segment 5. They set up the basement. Sarah moved with a speed that did not look like panic and was not panic. It was something a step above panic, a thing Mark had only ever seen in her once before. On the night Emily at 3 years old had stopped breathing in her crib, and Sarah had walked across the bedroom and taken their daughter out of the crib and cleared her airway and brought her back to breathing without once raising her voice or hurrying her hands. That was the Sarah who was now in the basement of their home in Canton, Georgia, on a Tuesday morning in October, while the air over Atlanta burned 40 miles south. She unrolled the cots. She set them in the corner of the basement farthest from the west wall, the corner tucked against the poured concrete and the earth behind it. She laid sleeping bags on 2 of them. She laid blankets on the 3rd. She opened the 2nd tub and pulled out a roll of heavy plastic sheeting and a roll of duct tape. And Mark, who had stopped being surprised by anything in this basement about 20 minutes ago, helped her without asking what it was for. "Mark, the small window, the one we looked out of."
"Yeah."
"I want it covered, plastic on the inside, tape on all 4 edges, all the way around, airtight as you can get it."
"Okay." Then the door at the top of the stairs, same treatment. Plastic over the inside of the door, tape on all 4 sides of the door frame, We are going to try to keep the air in the basement as isolated as we can.
Sarah, if something's already in the air, we are going to reduce what gets in from here forward. Every molecule we keep out is a molecule we don't breathe. Go.
He went.
He taped the small basement window. He taped the door at the top of the stairs. He did the work Sarah had told him to do. And while he was doing it, he thought about a million things at once. And the thing he thought about most was his mother-in-law. Sarah's mother was a 71-year-old widow who lived in a ranch house on the west side of Marietta with a rescue cat named Bernard and a bridge club on Thursdays and a standing Sunday lunch at the Smith house. If Dobbins Air Reserve Base had been struck, the mother of his wife had been in the lethal radius of a thermonuclear event without any warning whatsoever. He thought about that while he taped the door frame. He thought about the fact that he had seen his mother-in-law exactly 11 days ago at the kitchen table upstairs, eating a piece of pie and asking him if Jake had decided about college yet. He thought about the fact that he had never once told his mother-in-law that he loved her. He had thought it. He had never said it. That was going to be a thing he had to live with now. The fact of not having said it, and he did the taping, and he did not say any of this out loud. When he came back down the stairs, Sarah was changing Jake's shirt. Jake was standing with his arms out and Sarah was pulling his hoodie over his head because Jake's hoodie had been worn into the garage and then up to the kitchen window and then downstairs and then up again. And Sarah, working from a protocol Mark was beginning to realize she had written out in a nursing manual somewhere in her own handwriting, was treating the hoodie as contaminated because the hoodie had touched air that had come in from outside. She bagged it in a garbage bag and knotted it and set it at the far end of the basement. You too. Emily stood. Sarah changed Emily's hoodie and pants. She bagged them. Mark, you. He changed his shirt. She bagged his shirt. And Casey. Sarah, we can't. Not him, just his feet. Wipe down. I've got wipes. It's not perfect, but it's something. Hold his collar. I'll do his paws.
She wiped Casey's paws. Casey allowed it. His amber eyes watched her work, and every 40 or 50 seconds they flicked to the basement door at the top of the stairs, and back to her, and back to the door. Jake, sitting on the edge of a cot with a clean hoodie on, said, "Mom, why is Casey watching the door?" Sarah did not look up from the dog's paws because he heard something. When?
5 minutes ago, before we started taping. Why didn't you say something? Because we were taping and there was nothing to do about it. And now we're done. And now we're listening. They listened. At first there was nothing. Then above them, a long distant sound that Mark could not place. It was not thunder and not wind. It was a sustained rumble that did not come from one direction. It came from all directions. And it rolled for maybe 30 seconds. And it faded. And then it came again. Longer this time. And a few seconds after the second rumble, the house above them shuddered. Once, in a way the house had shuddered in ice storms and in the big straight-line winds 2 summers ago. But not like this, because this shudder came with a low-pressure change that Mark felt in his ears. Emily said, "What was that?" Sarah said, "Something far away." Mark said, "A long way away." Jake said, "Huntsville." Nobody answered him. The rumble faded a second time. There was a long silence, and then for the first time since they had come down into the basement, they heard a siren. It was a long way away. It was almost certainly an emergency vehicle that was running on a call it was not going to be able to finish. It wailed for about 15 seconds, Doppler shifted and faded, and did not come back. Jake said quietly, "Mr. Henderson." Jake.
"I know, Dad."
"I know you wanted to." "Dad, I heard you. I heard Mom. I'm not going up there. Mr. Henderson is 73 years old and his wife has a bad hip. And the car door was open on Jeffers and I don't know if that was their car or not. That's all."
"I know, son."
"Yeah." Mark looked at his son on the edge of the cot. He put his hand on the back of his son's neck. Jake didn't move. Mark left his hand there for about 10 seconds.
"Jake, listen." "Yeah." Your mother's right about today. That does not mean we do nothing forever. It means we do nothing today. Tomorrow or the day after that, you and I are going to walk over to Mr. Henderson's house together, because whatever is over there, we are going to look at it together. Not alone. Together. Do you hear me? Yeah, Dad.
Good. Emily in the corner, quietly. Dad.
Yeah, Em.
Is Grandma really in heaven? Mark looked at his wife. His wife did not look up from Casey's pause. Mark looked at his daughter.
Yes, sweetheart, he said. She really is.
Emily nodded once and went back to drawing. She was drawing Casey. Segment 6.
The hours went by the way hours go by in a basement when nobody is looking at a clock. Sarah had one wristwatch. Mark had one. Jake had a phone that he had turned off at his mother's instruction to preserve the battery. Emily had no idea what time it was and did not ask.
They ate something at one point. Sarah opened a jar of peanut butter and a sleeve of crackers from one of the tubs, and she put a spoonful of peanut butter on a cracker and handed it to Emily. And she did the same for Jake and Mark and herself. Nobody was hungry. Everybody ate anyway, because Sarah had said eat, and because none of them had the ability to argue with her anymore, and because at some level Mark understood that eating was itself a thing Sarah was making them do on purpose, a small act of normalcy pressed like a thumbprint against the wet concrete of the day. Sarah opened the water jug and poured a small cup for each of them. She gave Casey a bowl of water on the floor. Casey drank it. At a little after 10 in the morning, by the wristwatch on Mark's arm, Sarah turned on the hand crank radio again. She cranked it for a full 2 minutes before she turned it on, because she had read somewhere that 2 full minutes of cranking bought you about 15 minutes of run time, and she wanted 15 minutes if she could get it. The dial was mostly static. She worked it up and down. She got 2 frequencies that carried voices. The first was in Spanish. She moved on. The second was in English. And the man on the English frequency was not reading a prepared statement. He was talking the way a man talks when he has been broadcasting into his microphone for 2 hours and has not slept, and he was giving weather.
He was giving weather.
Mark sat up on the cot. Sarah cranked the volume up a notch and leaned in. The man on the radio was saying, "For listeners east of the Mississippi and north of the Gulf Coast, our best available information at this hour is westerly flow throughout the next 12 to 24 hours, with a weak trough moving across the Tennessee Valley late this evening. This means, for listeners in North Georgia, North Alabama, and East Tennessee, fallout from western events will continue to move in your direction. If you are in a shelter, remain in a shelter. If you are not in a shelter, shelter immediately. Do not travel, do not attempt to drive west under any circumstances. We have reports of I-20 westbound, I-24 westbound, and I-75 northbound, all experiencing conditions we can only describe as..." And then the frequency broke into static for about 15 seconds. And when it came back, the man was in the middle of a different sentence. Norfolk, Washington, San Diego, Offutt, Minot, Whiteman, Barksdale, Dobbins, Redstone, Oak Ridge, Kings Bay, and multiple additional sites we have not yet confirmed. Civilian casualty estimates are premature. We are going to come back in 30 minutes. God bless you. Shelter in place.
The voice went.
Sarah turned the radio off. She sat a long time on the concrete floor with her hands flat on her thighs, and she did not say anything, and nobody else did either. Finally, Jake said very quietly, "Mom." He said Dobbins.
"I know. Mom. That means..."
"I know what it means, Jake. Does Dad know what it means?"
"Yes, he does."
"Mom, does Grandma..."
"Jake, your grandmother is in heaven. I believe that. I have believed that for a long time. I will talk to you about it tomorrow or the next day or next week. I cannot talk to you about it right now. Do you understand?"
"Yes, Mom."
"Good boy. Come here."
Jake got up off the cot and walked over and knelt down in front of his mother on the concrete floor and put his head against her shoulder the way he had not done since he was 11. And Sarah put her hand on the back of her son's head, and she held him there for maybe a minute without saying anything. And then she let him go. She stood up. "All right, we are alive. We are in this basement. We have food and water for 10 days. We have each other. We have Casey. We are for the next 48 hours. as safe as we can reasonably be, because the worst of what is in the air is going to pass over us in that window. We are going to take turns sleeping. Mark and I will take turns staying awake. Jake, you will sleep when we tell you to sleep. Em, you will sleep when I tell you to sleep.
Okay, Mommy.
Mark.
Yeah. Come here. He came. She took him by both arms and she put her forehead against his for about 3 seconds. And then she stepped back and she said, I love you. I love you too.
I'm going to need you for the next 6 months. I know. I'm going to need you to stop being the man you were yesterday and start being somebody else. I don't have time to wait for it. I don't have time to teach it to you. I'm going to need you to figure it out on your own. Can you do that?
He looked at her. Yes. Good.
Sarah. Yeah. I'm sorry about the tubs. I know you are. Don't be sorry. Be ready. Okay. Casey's head came up. He was still lying next to Emily. His head came up. His ears came up. He was looking at the basement door at the top of the stairs. Sarah saw it before Mark did. Mark.
I see him.
Something's at the house. I see him, Sarah. Nobody moved. Casey's head stayed up. Emily stopped drawing. Jake sat very still on the edge of the cot. For about 20 seconds, there was no sound at all. Then from far upstairs, faintly but unmistakably, there came a sound, a knock. 3 slow knocks on the front door of the house, deliberate, spaced about a second apart, not urgent, not frantic, just 3 knocks. Mark looked at his wife.
We do not open the door, Sarah said. I know. We do not go upstairs.
I know. We do not call out.
I know.
3 more knocks, same spacing, same tempo, not harder, not louder. The same 3 knocks. Emily in the corner, in a voice so small that Mark almost missed it, said, Dad. Yeah, Em. Why is he knocking like that?
Mark did not answer her because he did not have an answer, because no person he had ever known in 40 years on this planet knocked on a door in the middle of a nuclear attack with that kind of calm. Casey had not taken his eyes off the top of the stairs.
The knocking stopped.
They waited.
It did not come again. Segment 7, nobody in the basement moved for what felt like a long time and was probably closer to 2 minutes.
Sarah was the first to move. She crossed the basement on the balls of her feet slowly, the way a nurse walks through a hospital room where a patient has just fallen asleep. And she got to the folding table where the pistol was, and she put her hand on the pistol without picking it up, and she turned and looked at Mark.
Mark got off the cot. He came to the table. He took the pistol.
Sarah.
Not upstairs. Sarah, we need to know. We do not go upstairs, Mark. Whatever is at that door can stay there for the rest of the day and for the night. We have plastic on the basement door. We have plastic on the window. Whatever is out there is not getting in, and we are not going up there.
What if it's a neighbor? Then they will come back tomorrow. What if it's Mr. Henderson?
Sarah looked at him. Her hazel eyes were very steady and very tired and very certain.
Mark, Mr. Henderson would shout. Mr. Henderson would pound. Mr. Henderson would call our names. A man who is scared pounds. A man who needs help shouts. A man who is dying cries out. What knocked on that door did not do any of those things. It knocked 3 times and waited and knocked 3 times again and stopped. Do you understand what I'm telling you? Yes. Say it back to me. Whatever was at the door was not a man asking for help. Good. She turned to Jake.
Jake, you are not going upstairs. Not today, not tonight, not tomorrow morning.
Okay, Mom. Jake, I heard you, Mom. I need your word. You have my word. Good.
She turned to Emily. Em, come here. Emily came. Sarah knelt in front of her and put both hands on her daughter's shoulders. Emily Grace Smith, listen to me. You are the quietest person in this basement, and I need you to stay the quietest person in this basement. You don't go up those stairs. You don't call out. You don't answer anybody outside the house. If you hear knocking, you come find me. If you hear voices, you come find me. If you hear anything you don't understand, you come find me. You do not do anything alone today, okay? Okay, Mommy. Good girl. She kissed her daughter on the top of the head and stood up. Mark, come here. They went to the far corner of the basement, out of the kid's earshot. She was close to him. Her voice was very quiet. I need to tell you something I did not put on the list. Okay.
We are going to be in this basement for 48 hours if we are lucky, more if we are not. After that, the fallout gets survivable in the outdoor air for short exposures. We will be able to go upstairs. We will not be able to leave the house, not for a couple of weeks at least. And the country that is out there, Mark, is not the country that was there yesterday. There are going to be people on our street who did not make it. There are going to be people on our street who did make it and are going to need help we cannot give because we cannot give help and stay alive. And there are going to be a few people maybe who made it and are not. They are not going to be all right. Something in them got broken by this. Something in the air or in the fear or in whatever else came down with those warheads, because I can tell you as a nurse that a lot of them have payloads that are not just heat and blast. The man on Jeffers was one. Whoever was at the door just now was maybe another. We are going to see more of them in the days ahead. Not a lot, just some. And you need to be ready for it. And you need to not ask me to be ready for it alone. He nodded. Okay. Mark, I said, okay, Sarah. I mean it. I hear you. I'm with you. Good.
She let out a long breath. He had not noticed she had been holding one. She went and sat on the edge of Emily's cot, and Emily climbed into her lap, and Sarah held her daughter. And for a few minutes, nobody said anything. Jake lay down on the other cot with his forearm over his eyes. Mark sat in the folding chair by the table with the pistol in his lap and the shotgun across his knees and watched the stairs. After a while, Jake spoke without moving his arm.
Dad?
Yeah. Do you believe in God? Mark looked at his son for a long moment. This was not a conversation they had ever had. This was not a conversation he had been prepared to have. It was also not a conversation he was going to duck. I believe in a God, Jake. Your mother's God, the one she reads the Bible for in the morning. I don't know that I know him the way she does. I don't know that I've ever worked at it. I don't know that I've ever had to.
Do you think he let this happen? I don't know, son. Do you think he could have stopped it? I don't know, son. Dad? Yeah, I'm scared. Me too.
Dad? Yeah, Mom's not scared. Mark looked at his wife sitting on the edge of a cot in a basement in Canton, Georgia, holding a 12-year-old daughter in her lap while the world outside burned. Your mother's scared, Jake. She's just not letting it drive.
Jake did not answer. After a while, his breathing got slow, and Mark looked over and saw that his son had actually fallen asleep and was not pretending. 17 years old, in a clean hoodie, in a basement, on a cot, at 10:53 in the morning, on the worst day in the history of the United States of America, asleep. Mark watched him sleep, and he did not know whether it was exhaustion or adrenaline crash or the body of a teenage boy doing what the body of a teenage boy does when it has no more inputs to process, but he was glad of it.
Emily in Sarah's lap said, Mom. Yeah, baby.
Can we pray? Sarah looked up at Mark across the basement. Mark looked back at her. He did not look away.
Yes, Sarah said. We can pray. Can Daddy pray?
Mark did not say anything.
Daddy can pray too, Sarah said. Daddy's going to learn. Outro. The afternoon in the basement was a slow, strange thing. Sarah slept for an hour on the cot with Emily tucked against her chest. Mark sat in the folding chair by the table and did not sleep. Jake slept on the other cot and did not move. Casey lay across the bottom of the stairs with his head on his paws and his amber eyes half open and did not sleep either. Around 2 in the afternoon, by Mark's watch, a second distant rumble rolled through the house. It was longer than the first one and deeper, and the pressure change that came with it was smaller, which suggested it was farther away than the first one had been. Mark did not know whether that was secondary detonations or sympathetic explosions at oil terminals, or ammunition dumps going up in the fires that must by now be burning across the southeast. He did not want to know exactly. He noted the time, 2:06. He wrote it down in his own handwriting on the back of Sarah's protocol sheet. Outside, through the plastic and the tape and the insulation and the earth, The world that had been the world of his adult life was ending, and the ending was not loud. The ending was quiet. The ending was the absence of the hum of the refrigerator, the absence of the distant wash of I-575 traffic, the absence of the dishwasher next door, the absence of the mower 3 houses over. The silence pressed down on the house like weight. Around 4, Sarah woke up. She sat up carefully so as not to wake Emily, and she slid Emily off her and laid her down on the cot and covered her with a blanket. And she came over to the folding chair. "Mark, I'm here. You sleep." "I'm all right." "You sleep, Mark. I've got the next 4 hours. You sleep or you won't be any good to me tonight." Sarah.
Sleep.
He slept. He did not dream. Or if he did not remember it when he woke up, which was to Casey's low growl and Sarah's hand on his shoulder. The basement was dim. The lantern was down low. Sarah's face was close to his, and her hand was on his shoulder, and she was not speaking. He sat up slowly. Casey was at the bottom of the stairs. His whole body was rigid. His lips were pulled back off his teeth. The low growl in his chest was a real growl now. Not the sound before a growl, the real thing, steady and continuous and very quiet. At the top of the stairs, on the other side of the door, on the other side of the plastic and the tape, there was something. Mark listened. It was breathing. It was breathing very slowly and very deliberately, in a rhythm that was not the breathing of a person who had come down into a basement stairwell out of breath or out of fear. It was the breathing of something standing at a door, on purpose, listening. Mark looked at his wrist. 7:53 in the evening. He looked at Sarah. Sarah's eyes were on the stairs. The pistol was in her right hand. She had taken the pistol off his lap while he slept, and she was holding it down at her thigh, and she was not pointing it at anything yet. The breathing at the top of the stairs stopped. There was a pause of about 3 seconds. Then, very softly, as if someone was listening for them as much as they were listening for it, there was a sound of weight shifting on the other side of the door. A weight leaning, maybe. A weight testing the door, maybe. The plastic sheet made a very small crackling sound. Casey's growl deepened. Sarah's hand was on Mark's shoulder. Her grip tightened. A voice came through the door. It was a man's voice. It was calm. It was not shouting. It was not pleading. It was speaking in a conversational tone, the way a neighbor speaks to a neighbor across a fence on a Saturday afternoon. It said, through the door, through the plastic, through the wood, down the stairs, into the basement, where the Smith family sat frozen in the half-dark, "I can hear your dog." Nobody in the basement breathed. The voice said a second later, in the same calm tone, "Don't worry, I'm not coming down." And then after another long pause, softer, almost gentle, "Not tonight." The weight on the other side of the door lifted. The plastic crackled again as whatever had been pressing it relaxed off of it. The slow breathing resumed for about 5 seconds. Then it faded, the way footsteps fade when someone walks away from a door in stocking feet. And then there was nothing. Casey stayed at the bottom of the stairs. Sarah did not lower the pistol. Mark sat on the edge of the cot in the dim lantern light of his own basement, and he listened to the silence above him, and he understood that the world he had woken up in at 6:30 that morning was not only gone, it had been gone for a long time before it had ended, and no one had told him. Above them, somewhere upstairs, something moved once more, softly, and then the house went quiet, and stayed quiet, and the night came down over Canton, Georgia, and over the country, and over what was left of it.
This is not over.